This is a copyrighted work. Unauthorized copy or distribution is a crime punishable by up to 5 years in prison and a fine of $250,000.
We return to We, Understanding the Psychology of Romantic Love by Robert A. Johnson. Part 1. The Narrative. How Tristan was born and grew up to be a great knight. Long ago in the days of King Arthur, Mark was king in Cornwall. Now Mark was a fair and good king, and all his subjects loved him for his justice and kindness. But those were evil times, for cruel enemies surrounded Mark and invaded his lands. But good King Rivelin of Lyonesse brought his army across from France, and by his help King Mark won a great victory. So grateful was he that he gave his only sister, Blanchefleur, to be wed to King Rivelin in token of eternal friendship and alliance. Blanchefleur was like her name, which means white flower, delicate, fair, and pale. A royal wedding was held in Tintagel Castle, and there a baby was conceived. And you will hear more of that fateful child, for he is Tristan. Before long came grim news. King Rivelin's cities in Lyonesse were besieged by a treacherous tyrant, Duke Morgan. Rivelin set sail with his new queen, Blanchefleur, and with his army, and returned to his land to do battle. But after months of war, poor King Rivelin was caught in foul ambush and cruelly murdered by Morgan. When Blanchefleur heard, she grew pallid and faint, and her life flowed out of her. She had no more desire to live on earth, but only longed to join her husband in the other world. Yet she was heavy with child. She abided 3 days in sorrow and longing for death. And on the 4th day she brought forth a child and said, "Little son, I have longed a while to see you, the fairest thing ever a woman bore. In sadness came I hither. In sadness did I bring forth. In sadness has your first feast day gone. And as by sadness you came into the world, your name shall be called Tristan, that is, the child of sadness." Thus did she name her child, and kissed him, and then she died. Now Lord Rohalt was the faithful marshal of King Rivelin, and when he saw the war was lost, he surrendered the castles to Duke Morgan, and all the land of Lyonesse came under tyranny. But Rohalt hid the baby Tristan among his own sons, lest the wicked Duke Morgan murder the child. Tristan grew fair and strong among the sons of Rohalt, but he did not know who he was, believing Rohalt to be his own father. As he grew, his faithful squire taught him all the arts of barony, lance and sword, scythian and bow, to cast stone quoits, to leap wide dikes, to hate each lie and felony, to keep his word, to sing and play the harp, to do the hunter's craft. Tristan rode as though he and his horse were one. He was loyal and brave, although only a boy, and he wielded his sword like a full-grown knight. All men praised Rohalt for his noble son, but Rohalt looked on Tristan and knew him for his king. One day, Norwegian pirates, posing as merchants, lured Tristan aboard their ship. Though the boy fought like a lion cub, the pirates captured and bound him. For they could sail so fine a youth in servitude in some distant land, but the sea would not bear the felon ship. A terrible storm blew, and great waves poured over the decks. As the felons knew the gods of the ocean were angered by their crime, they put Tristan into a boat and set him free. Instantly the waves calmed. Ahead, Tristan saw land, and he gratefully pulled for shore. Now those were the fair green shores of Cornwall, and there his uncle, King Mark, still ruled. By chance, the king's huntsmen were by the shore, and Tristan so pleased them by his skill that they took him to the court of the king. But when Mark gazed on Tristan, he was troubled and filled with tenderness, and knew not why. For in Tristan he saw the face of his beloved sister, Blanchefleur, and her blood called out to him. After the evening meal, Tristan took up a harp and sang the old songs. Then every heart was lifted and every eye filled with tears. And King Mark said, "Son, blessed be the master that taught thee, and blessed be thou of God, for God loves good singers. For our joy did you come to this roof. Stay near us a long time, friend." And Tristan answered, "Here I will stay, my lord, and serve you faithfully as your liege." For 3 years, Tristan lived in Tintagel Castle, and the king was as a father to him, and a deep love grew between them. When 3 years had passed, the faithful Marshal Rohalt came to Cornwall, for he had searched for Tristan in many lands. Thus Tristan found out who he was, the nephew of King Mark, the son of King Rivellin, the heir to the throne of Lyonesse. Then, with a company of good knights, Tristan crossed the waters to Lyonesse and razed the countryside, and the people rose with courage against the tyrant Morgan. Tristan met the traitor on the field of combat and slew him with the sword, and thus he repaid Morgan's treachery in times past. But Tristan put Rohalt on the throne of Lyonesse and said to his barons, "Here I am king, and this land is dear, but my heart is with my uncle, good King Mark. Now the tyrant is dead. I give you here my faithful Rohalt to rule you in my stead, for I must up and go to Mark and serve him as my lord." At those words the barons groaned and cried together, for they would keep Tristan in Lyonesse to rule them. But they answered, "It is just, my lord." In those days Ireland was a mighty kingdom, and the Irish king taxed Cornwall for a terrible tribute. The Cornish people ground their teeth together in anger and sorrow. For every 4th year they had to send 300 youths and 300 maidens of their sons and daughters to serve as slaves and die in Ireland. But for 15 years King Mark had refused to pay the tribute, and the Irish king was wrathful. Now the queen in Ireland was a great sorceress, and her brother was a giant called the Morholt. So tall and strong was he that not even 5 knights together could overcome him. One sad day, the Morholt landed in Cornwall with many knights and demanded the tribute of youths and maidens. "But," he said, "if any knight in Cornwall will fight me, then we have a trial by combat to see if the King of Ireland receives his tribute without cause. For God will give me the victory if my Irish king is in the right." The Morholt stood before all the barons in the king's court and offered trial by combat, but all stood silent and afraid. Again, the next day he came before the king's court and offered combat, but it was as though a hawk had entered into a cage of sparrows. The Cornish barons shivered and hid their heads under their wings. But on the 3rd day, a young boy stood forth and, kneeling before the king, said, "My lord, let me do battle." And that boy was Tristan. Tristan fought the Morholt on a tiny islet off the shore. On the day of the battle, the barons cried with pity and shame, for they had not Tristan's courage. The people followed Tristan to the shore, weeping and praying. They still had hope, for hope in the heart of men lives on lean pasture. At the battleground, Tristan jumped from his boat. Then he turned and pushed his boat adrift. The Morholt was surprised, but Tristan said, "One of us only will go hence alive. One boat will serve." The people gathered on the shore heard 3 times a great cry from the islet. The knights of the Morholt laughed, sure of victory. But the Cornish women wept and did rituals of mourning, standing in a line, clapping their hands in unison, making a high-pitched mourning wail. At noontime, the people saw the Morholt's boat returning from the islet, the wind bellowing its sail of royal purple. Then truly they lost hope and wept in despair. But as the boat approached, suddenly they saw Tristan standing in the bow, holding 2 swords, and the sun gleamed on his armor. The young men cried out and jumped into the water in their joy, and swam out to meet him. Then, when they pulled his boat in, Tristan said to the Morholt knights, "My lords of Ireland, the Morholt fought well. See here, my sword is broken, and a splinter of it stands fast in his head. Take you that steel, my lords. It is a tribute of Cornwall." Though blood flowed from his wounds, Tristan walked through Tintagel town up to the castle, and crowds waved green branches and spread flowers along his path. They shouted praises to God. They hung rich tapestries from their windows, and all along the way, bells pealed and trumpets sounded in joy. Before the castle, Tristan fell in the arms of King Mark and fainted from his wounds. Tristan's wounds grew worse and worse, for the Morholt had pierced him with a poisoned barb. He turned pale and his body wasted. Neither doctor nor magician could find to heal him. For that poison, only the sorceress Queen of Ireland and her daughter Iseult the Fair had the secret charm of healing. But those 2 magical women were in Ireland. Day and night they watched over the body of the Morholt. Day and night they cursed the name of Tristan of Lyoness. Day and night they thirsted for revenge. Now Tristan knew there was no cure for him in Cornwall, but his heart told him to go to sea and seek either healing or death. "I would like to try the sea that brings all chances. I would have the sea bear me far off alone, to what land no matter, so that it heal me of my wound, and perchance some day I will once more serve you, fair uncle, as your harper, your huntsman, and your liege." They laid him gently in a small boat without sail or oars. He left his sword on the shore, for it could no longer help him, but he took his harp into the boat for comfort on the way. Then, with tears, they pushed him out to sea and committed him to God, and the sea drew him away. For 7 days and 7 nights, Tristan lay upon the waters, and then he drew near ashore. In the darkness of night, fishermen heard soft melodies like silver floating above the water. At dawn they found him, lifeless in his boat, his hand resting on his silent harp. The fishermen took Tristan ashore and sent instant word to their lady, for she had the gift of healing. Their lady was Iseult the Fair. Her mother was the sorceress Queen of Ireland, and this harbor was Whitehaven, where the Morholt lay in his tomb. So they carried the wounded stranger to the Princess Iseult. Of all the women in the world, she alone could heal him. But of all the women in the world, it was she who most wished him dead. We have reached the end of Part 1, the narrative, how Tristan was born and grew up to be a knight. Please return to our next video as we continue reading We understanding the psychology of romantic love. Kindly like, subscribe, and share. Until next time. As a general disclaimer, the views and opinions expressed in this book belong to the author and may not always reflect those of this channel and its affiliates. This recording and video is for the purpose of research, study, and discussion.